"She's not Sarah Morrison!" The shout echoed through the glittering ballroom as the petite woman turned around, her eyes blazing no longer like those of a victim. The fiery slap that landed on Nathan not only shattered the champagne glass in his hand, but also smashed the entire mask he'd built over the years. Because in that moment, Sarah revealed, she was Sarah Blackwell, the granddaughter of the family that founded the empire Nathan was scheming to seize. And tonight, in front of 300 witnesses, she would tear apart every dark secret of his. But what Sarah didn't know, the man she thought she'd cornered still had one card left to play. A sharp crash echoed in the luxurious Upper East Side apartment. Not a gunshot, but the sound of crystal shattering on the floor, breaking into 100 pieces. Sarah stood frozen, her hands still trembling, eyes fixed on the red wine spreading like blood across the polished wooden floor. Outside the window, Manhattan's golden lights filtered in, but inside this room, everything felt suffocatingly oppressive. Everyone knew Sarah Morrison as the wife of Nathan Mitchell, the ambitious young vice president of Blackwell Industries. In the eyes of high society, she was the perfect woman, gentle, discreet, always trailing behind her husband like a shadow crafted to enhance his success. No one suspected that in this glamorous apartment, behind the dazzling parties, lay a completely different truth. Sarah quietly bent down, picking up the shattered crystal pieces. Her slender hand brushed with blood, but her eyes remained bright, unflinching. Because she knew, physical wounds were nothing compared to the scars on her soul that Nathan had inflicted. And these shards reminded her, the mask of Sarah Morrison was just a shell. Her true self, with the name she'd hidden for years, was Sarah Blackwell, the last granddaughter of the founding family of the conglomerate. 3 years ago, she had chosen to enter this marriage. Not for love, not out of naivety, but for one sole purpose: to expose the true face of the man the entire conglomerate hailed as the brightest star. When Nathan knelt to propose at a gala in Central Park, all of New York erupted in cheers. Sarah, in her pristine white dress, smiled radiantly for the press cameras. To the world, she was a lucky woman, chosen by a talented man with a promising future. But behind that smile was cold calculation. She was stepping into the wolf's den, accepting life in the shadows to drag the light back to herself. From the first months, Sarah saw her husband's true colors. Nathan didn't love, he possessed. He didn't protect, he controlled. One wrong word, one stray glance, and rage exploded. That night, when his hand first left a mark on her cheek, Sarah vowed to herself, she wouldn't cry, she wouldn't run. She would stay and turn this marriage into the perfect trap. The world saw only Sarah Morrison, the obedient wife. But in the darkness, Sarah Blackwell began rewriting her fate. She used skills few knew she'd been trained in: forensic accounting, data analysis, and the art of observing people. She learned to smile when Nathan boasted, to listen when he unwittingly revealed murky financial clues, to hide her sharp gaze whenever he thought he'd concealed his secrets. The apartment became a stage, and every day Sarah performed more perfectly. Nathan grew increasingly confident, believing he'd fully owned this wife. But he didn't know that every invoice, every email, every strange call was silently noted by Sarah. The bruises on her skin became silent evidence, each mark a letter in the indictment she was preparing. And then, in this moment today, as the red wine glass shattered, she realized the time to shift from observation to action was near. The crystal cut her hand, but Sarah felt no pain. She only felt hot blood pulsing through her veins, a reminder that she was still alive, still strong enough to complete her mission. Tonight, Nathan still believed he was at his peak. In the coming weeks, he'd enter decisive negotiations that could propel him straight to CEO. He was so confident he grew careless, leaving traces that a keen eye like Sarah's couldn't miss. And right now, she knew, the hunt had begun. Sarah Morrison, the image of the demure wife, would continue to exist in the world's eyes. But Sarah Blackwell, the patient hunter, was ready to step out of the shadows. The piano music echoed throughout the Central Park Gala Hall 3 years ago. Crystal chandeliers hung high, casting a soft golden light over the jubilant faces of the elite guests. That night, Nathan Mitchell took the stage, a sparkling diamond ring in hand. As he knelt before Sarah, the crowd erupted in cheers. Cameras flashed non-stop, as if this moment was scripted for the back cover of a business magazine. To the world, it was a fairy tale romance, a young, promising vice president finding the woman of his life. But for Nathan, this marriage was just the next step in his quest for power. He didn't choose Sarah for her heart, but for her background. The name Morrison, which Nathan believed was the daughter of a modest tech entrepreneur, seemed safe enough not to threaten his ambitions, yet elegant enough to enter the high society he craved. Nathan had never loved. He calculated. Every decision was based on gain and image. A beautiful wife who stayed silent, caused no trouble. The perfect piece for the success portrait he was painting. When Sarah smiled and accepted, Nathan was sure he'd won a major chess game. But he didn't know that in that moment, Sarah was playing a different game altogether. She looked at Nathan with sparkling eyes as if drowning in happiness. But deep inside, she'd already read every line of him. The sweet promises, the romantic gestures he displayed publicly, all only confirmed to her that he was a man wearing a mask no less than her own. If Nathan sought her to complete his power picture, she sought him to paint a picture of justice. The wedding took place in an ancient New York church amid winter. Snow fell thick outside, but inside, white roses lined the aisle. Sarah walked in her pure wedding gown, stepping slowly toward the altar. Onlookers saw the tremble in her hands as emotion, but only Sarah knew it was the weight of her choice. She wasn't entering a marriage, she was entering a trap. Nathan, in his tailor-made tuxedo, looked at his new bride with triumphant eyes. He held her hand, kissed her lips before hundreds of guests, as if claiming a newly acquired asset. That kiss was long, but soulless. It didn't make Sarah tremble with love, but with the affirmation that she'd positioned herself perfectly, beside the man she needed to take down. In the months after the wedding, Nathan revealed his nature more clearly. He treated his wife like jewelry, parading her everywhere for show. But behind closed doors, coldness and dominance filled the space. Sarah quickly learned that if she didn't control her emotions, cracks would show. So she learned to smile at every dinner, to laugh softly when Nathan's friends praised him, to keep her gaze gentle even when inside she wanted to scream. Increasingly, Nathan believed Sarah was the ideal wife. He grew smug, thinking he'd chosen correctly. But Sarah knew that smugness would be his downfall. A man who believes himself absolutely clever often overlooks small details, and those details are where the truth hides. She began memorizing every snippet of conversation, every invoice, every financial transaction Nathan carelessly revealed. At night, when Nathan slept off his long drinking sessions, Sarah sat quietly at her desk, eyes bright in the golden lamplight, jotting down every detail. Every number, every name, every location, all threaded together in a small notebook hidden at the bottom of her drawer. She knew this wasn't a marriage. This was a battle. And Nathan, unknowingly, had walked himself into the encirclement of a woman he thought harmless. At parties, Sarah still held Nathan's arm, smiling as if enchanted by his success stories. But when the lights went out, when the apartment fell silent, she whispered in her mind, "You're not my husband. You're my prey." Autumn mornings in Manhattan often began with the hum of traffic from Madison Avenue, golden sunlight piercing the curtains, and the steam rising from coffee in the kitchen. For many, it was a gentle start to the day. But for Sarah, that morning brought only the sting on her skin and teary eyes as she looked in the mirror. A blue-purple bruise stood out clearly on her left cheekbone, just below her elegant features. She touched it lightly, pain shooting through her temple. The first mark, and a warning, that this marriage would never be a safe haven. The night before, over a single unsatisfactory answer, Nathan had lost control. The slap came so fast Sarah couldn't brace herself. In that instant, the luxurious apartment became a cage, and the man before her was no longer a husband but a predator in a suit. She could have cried, could have fled, sought other doors for help, but Sarah didn't. She stood still, hands trembling but eyes staring straight. In that painful moment she understood. If she ran, she'd forever be a victim. But if she stayed, if she turned pain into strength, she could become the one in control of this game. The next morning, she applied makeup meticulously in front of the mirror. Layers of concealer covered the blue-purple, transforming her face back to its usual gentleness. As she stepped out, no one in the upscale neighborhood could suspect that beneath the powder was a fresh wound. Sarah smiled, entered the limousine, and became once again the perfect wife of Nathan Mitchell. But in her heart, a decision was etched deep. This would be the first bruise, and the start of the hunt. In the days that followed, Sarah observed more closely. She noted how Nathan drank more under work pressure, how he lied smoothly to friends, how midnight calls left shadows in his eyes the next morning. Every detail, every bad habit was memorized by Sarah, like a hunter quietly tracking prey signs. She also realized something crucial. Nathan wasn't just impulsively violent. He had a system. He knew when to be gentle to keep his wife close, when to be cold to control, when to explode to instill fear. It wasn't loss of control. It was tactics. And if he had tactics, she needed a bigger, longer plan. New bruises appeared on her arms, shoulders, back, each time perfectly hidden by clothes and smiles. But instead of breaking Sarah, they became silent diary entries. She began photographing them, carefully storing on a hidden hard drive, with dates and events. No longer just enduring, Sarah turned her body into living evidence, an investigation file. Some nights, she sat alone in her office, golden light illuminating her cold face. She placed her hand on the bruise on her arm, closed her eyes and whispered, "I won't fall. I'll use you to end him." The outside world still saw them as a perfect couple. At galas, Sarah held Nathan's arm, smiling gently, creating the happy portrait the press praised. But only she knew that beneath those glamorous gowns were wounds not yet healed. And with every step, she calculated the path to turn those wounds into the sharpest weapons. The first bruise wasn't just a mark of violence. It was the starting point of a transformation. From a woman entering marriage for a plan, Sarah had become a true warrior. She was no longer just observing. She had chosen to become the predator. New York nights drowned in distant sirens, neon lights flickering through windows from billboards. In the high-rise apartment, Nathan slept off a boozy party, his breathing heavy and even. Sarah quietly slipped from bed, threw on a thin cardigan, and entered her office. The door closed behind her. She turned on the small desk lamp, golden light spilling over files and an open laptop. On the screen, complex spreadsheets appeared, dozens of overlapping columns of data, bank accounts, payment invoices, unclear consulting fees. Sarah had started piecing them together months ago. She discovered mismatched numbers, shady transactions flowing through shell companies. At first, they were just small cracks in a solid wall. But the deeper she dug, the clearer it became. Not oversights, but a sophisticated embezzlement system. Sarah knew she couldn't do this alone. One small mistake, one exposed trace, and Nathan would notice immediately. So she began building a trusted circle. Small, but solid. The first was Emily Carter, a forensic accountant who'd worked with Blackwell Industries but left due to dissatisfaction with the hidden power culture. Sarah didn't reveal her true identity, only using encrypted channels to send data. Emily, with her sharp intuition, quickly spotted the gaps Sarah needed confirmed. Next was David Lawson, a renowned lawyer defending victims in New York, who'd brought many powerful men to court. Sarah approached him as Morrison, sharing just enough of the story to build trust, but not too much to reveal all. David listened, nodded slowly, and said only, "If you want to topple a man like that, be ready for war." Sarah smiled, because that's exactly what she'd prepared for. Finally, she connected with an anonymous digital expert known only as Spectre. This person helped her back up all data, hidden in secure off-site storage beyond Nathan's reach. Every email, message, photo she sent was encrypted, untraceable. The pieces began fitting. A chain of $2.3 million transactions through 3 shell companies. Unexplained payments to HR consultants that were actually hush money for harassment victims. Scattered notes matching nights Nathan vanished without explanation. The picture grew clearer, and Sarah knew she'd touched the root of a massive poison tree. But danger lurked always. Once, Nathan returned early from a meeting unexpectedly. Sarah was mid-copying data in her office. Her heart pounded, hands shaking as she quickly hid the USB in her palm. Nathan entered, reeking of alcohol, eyes narrowing as he scanned the room. "What are you doing?" His voice hoarse, full of suspicion. Sarah smiled faintly, raising her hand to yawn. "Just checking emails, love. Couldn't sleep." Nathan stared long, then nodded and left. The door closed, and Sarah slumped into her chair, cold sweat soaking her back. She knew 1 second slip, and everything would crumble. She organized the data into separate files, each with backups in multiple places. One hidden in a bank safe, one sent to Emily, one held by Spectre. Sarah understood. A hunter is only safe with multiple layers of nets. Meanwhile, Nathan grew more confident. He didn't know every word in meetings, every shady decision, every forced touch in the dark. All were being recorded, carefully and coldly. He thought he was building an empire. But Sarah was writing the indictment. Some nights, gazing through the window at the glittering city below, Sarah felt her heart tighten. She knew she was on a path with no return. But then she looked at the bruises on her body, at the faces of other women she'd encountered by chance, hearing their whispers of hidden traumas. They gave her the strength not to falter. Sarah was no longer the wife hidden behind makeup layers. She was the predator quietly setting the perfect trap, and when it closed, no one could escape. Jazz music swelled in the grand Waldorf Astoria ballroom. Crystal chandeliers dropped thousands of twinkling lights, reflecting off evening gowns and champagne flutes in the hands of the elite. This was the biggest night of the year, Blackwell Industries' annual gala. For Nathan Mitchell, it wasn't just a social event. It was the stage to prove he was ready for CEO. He had no idea that right under his feet, Sarah had laid a sophisticated trap. For months, Sarah had quietly planned tonight. She ensured key presences. Olivia Pearson, the current CEO, known for her cold fairness. Emily Carter, the forensic expert with the thick evidence file. David Lawson, the lawyer ready to drop a legal bomb at any moment. And above all, several other victims, women who'd stayed silent out of fear, now agreeing to stand in the shadows waiting for their moment to speak. Everything was calculated like a chess game. Sarah chose the Waldorf Astoria over the Four Seasons because the lighting here could be adjusted easily, allowing dramatic effects for the reveal. She sent invitations through the board office, cleverly ensuring press coverage under the guise of capturing the historic transition of the conglomerate. Even seating was meticulous. Nathan in the center, under blazing lights, Olivia and the board, right in front, Sarah, as usual, beside her husband, outwardly gentle, but eyes sharp as steel. She wore a black silk gown that hugged her figure, hair loosely flowing. To the world, she was just the supportive wife. But in her mind, tonight wasn't a gala. Tonight was a trial. Nathan took the podium. Spotlights shone down, his face radiant, smile full of confidence. He spoke of Blackwell Industries' future, global expansion, integrity, and trust, words he'd never truly lived by. The crowd applauded thunderously. Cameras flashed endlessly. In the shadows behind, Sarah felt her heart pounding. Not from fear. It was the beat of a predator about to strike. She glanced subtly at Emily, clutching the thick file folder. David Lawson stood silent, eyes on the stage, awaiting the signal. And in the corner shadows, those women, the victims, trembled, but their eyes shone, waiting for the flame to ignite. Nathan ended his speech with a promise to take the conglomerate to new heights. Applause roared. He bowed, strode back to the table where Sarah sat. In his arrogant eyes, she saw only blind hubris. He didn't know that in bowing, the noose had tightened. Sarah raised her champagne flute, smiling. That was the signal. Emily placed the file on the table. David stepped forward a few paces, as if ready to speak. Cameras instinctively turned toward the area. Olivia Pearson tilted her head slightly, her cold eyes showing rare attention. The ballroom's atmosphere shifted from joyful to expectant, as if everyone sensed something was coming. Sarah took a deep breath. She knew there was only one chance. 1 second late, if Nathan sensed it, all effort would vanish. But if timed right, this blow wouldn't just collapse Nathan's career. It would spark an unprecedented overhaul in Blackwell Industries' history. She stood. The chair scraped lightly, a small sound but enough to draw eyes. Sarah raised her glass, gentle smile on her lips, as always before. But in her eyes, a fire blazed. The elegant gala continued. Jazz music, laughter, twinkling lights. But at the central table, under the golden glow, a storm was forming. A spoon lightly tapped the champagne glass rim. The small sound rang like a bell in the luxurious room. All eyes gradually turned to Sarah, the wife known for her silence. appearing only as a shadow behind Nathan. She stood tall, graceful in her black dress, gentle smile painted on her lips. Nathan frowned slightly, not understanding why his wife wanted attention. He reached to touch her arm, intending to pull her down. But Sarah shook her head lightly. Her eyes then, cold, resolute, made Nathan's hand freeze momentarily. "Sorry for interrupting," Sarah began, voice calm, caring just enough through the murmurs. "But there's a truth I think everyone here needs to know." The air immediately hushed. Olivia Pearson raised an eyebrow, her sharp eyes intensifying. Board members turned their chairs towards Sarah. Reporters' cameras clicked on, flashes igniting. Sarah drew a deep breath. Then she spoke, each word clear like knife cuts through the long charade. "My name is not Sarah Morrison. I am Sarah Blackwell." A shockwave rippled through the ballroom. Murmurs erupted like wind through dry leaves. Nathan froze, eyes wide, staring at the woman before him. "What?" he stammered, voice choking. Sarah turned to her husband. For the first time, she didn't lower her gaze. "You married the heir to the very conglomerate you planned to swallow whole. And for the past 2 years, I've recorded everything you've done." She nodded slightly to Emily. Immediately, the forensic accountant stepped forward, placing the thick file on the board table. David Lawson followed, opening his briefcase, pulling out a series of documents. On the ballroom's large screen, numbers and images appeared. Money flows through shell companies, shady contracts, extracted internal emails. The noise turned to thick silence, all eyes fixed on Nathan. $2.3 million laundered through 3 shell companies. Sarah continued, voice icy. "Hidden expenses to silence female employees you harassed, and risky financial decisions that nearly drove Blackwell Industries to the brink." Nathan jumped up, face flushed red. "She's lying," he shouted, voice echoing through the room. "This is a conspiracy, a cheap revenge plot." Sarah didn't flinch. She pulled a small USB from her gown pocket, holding it high under the lights. "This has photos, videos, testimonies. Not just mine, but many others." In the ballroom corner, a young woman stepped out, face pale but eyes resolute. Then 2 more, 3. The long silent victims, now advancing together. They needed no words. Their presence was the strongest indictment. Olivia Pearson stood, lightly tapping the table, cold eyes fixed on Nathan. "Mr. Mitchell, do you have anything to say?" Nathan looked around, sweat pouring. The crowd no longer cheered praise but stared with anger, curiosity, horror. He stammered, then roared, "You betrayed me, Sarah." He lunged, hand raised high, intending to strike the woman who was once his wife. But Sarah didn't back down. She stood straight, eyes blazing, letting the entire ballroom witness. The predator had no power left but raw violence. Shouts erupted. Security rushed in. Nathan was restrained, thrashing like a cornered beast. Cameras flashed relentlessly, capturing every humiliating moment. Sarah lowered her hand, breathing slowly. In that second, she knew she'd won. Not just because of the evidence, but because the truth was spoken, publicly, irrevocably. Dear audience, grab a glass of water, take a moment to relax, and keep listening to the story. The twists are still to come. And please drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to see who's joining us from around the world. Drop a 1 in the comments if you find this story gripping, so we can keep bringing you more captivating tales. In the ballroom, chaos exploded like a storm. An empire had shaken, all starting from a woman rising to tear off her disguise. The chaotic sounds still echoed as police escorted Nathan from the ballroom. Camera flashes captured endlessly the image of a man once hailed as Blackwell Industries' shining star, now a criminal, face twisted in rage and despair. The jazz music had stopped long ago, leaving heavy silence where people sat stunned, not yet believing what they'd witnessed. Sarah stood motionless in the room's center, chandelier lights shining down, making her the universe's focal point. Many eyes fell on her. Admiration, gratitude, but also fear, because she'd done what few dared, topple a powerful man on his own stage. Olivia Pearson approached, her usual cold demeanor now carrying a hint of respect. "Miss Blackwell," she said, deliberately emphasizing the true name. "Tonight you've changed everything, not just for this company, but for all the women who stayed silent." Sarah nodded lightly, but in her eyes, no pride. Only exhaustion and a clear awareness. This battle wasn't over. The next day, the press exploded. Every front page flooded with images of Sarah in her black dress, eyes fiery facing Nathan. She was called the mysterious heir, Blackwell's undercover warrior, even compared by one paper to the Joan of Arc of corporate world. But behind the praise was an earthquake. Stock prices plummeted. The board forced an emergency meeting. Major partners hesitated on contracts. Nathan was formally charged. The files Sarah and her team submitted to authorities were enough to turn accusations into a heavy sentence. Media reported he faced over 20 years for embezzlement and abuse. The man who once stood on the podium like a king now sat in a cell, eyes vacant. But for Sarah, victory wasn't purely sweet. She soon realized she'd stepped into a new battlefield. Some board members whispered, wary that her return as Blackwell meant the family reclaiming power. In the cold headquarters corridors, Sarah heard half-hidden remarks. She could control everything. Don't forget, Nathan couldn't do it all alone. She understood Nathan was just the first to fall. Behind him were those who'd turned a blind eye, even profited from corruption. And now, they'd protect themselves, even by making her the enemy. Still, Sarah didn't retreat. She accepted Olivia's offer to become vice president of corporate integrity, a new position created post-scandal. It wasn't just power. It was a tool to set new rules, lay foundations for a different Blackwell Industries, more transparent, fairer, safer for women. Her first day in the new office, Sarah sat before the window overlooking vast New York. In her heart, the pain hadn't faded, the nights of control, the bruises not yet vanished, the times she swallowed tears to keep secrets, but they became fuel for her resolve. She took a pen, signing her first document, Blackwell Standards, a code against harassment and internal corruption, binding everyone from interns to executives. A clear declaration. The era of hiding was over. However, as afternoon sun set, shadows crept over the city. Sarah knew truth always had a price. In that darkness, those who'd stood with Nathan wouldn't sit idle. And when a throne emptied, someone always craved to climb it. Sarah closed the file, looking up at her reflection in the opposite mirror. The woman staring back was no longer Sarah Morrison, the controlled one, nor just Sarah Blackwell, the heir, but a new image. A warrior emerging from shadows, carrying both strength and scars. She smiled faintly. The first battle ended, but the real war had just begun. The Monday morning after the exposure, Blackwell Industries headquarters blazed with lights from ground to top floor. Crowds of reporters jammed the entrance, lenses aimed at every company movement post-earthquake. Inside, tension enveloped. Employees walked faster than usual. Hallway whispers fell silent when Sarah passed. On paper, she'd just become vice president of corporate integrity. In reality, the role was a double-edged sword, power and target. Because Sarah didn't just bring hope, she was a living reminder that an untouchable had been toppled. And for those still hiding secrets, that was a threat. In the first executive meeting, Sarah sat opposite the conglomerate's most powerful faces. Olivia Pearson presided, voice cold, emphasizing full reform. Some nodded, but Sarah spotted odd glances from a few. Richard Hale, the veteran CFO famous for number tricks. Victoria Lang, HR director who'd buried dozens of complaints. They clapped in rhythm, but eyes flashed differently, wariness, even hostility. When Sarah presented the Blackwell Standards draft, declaring zero tolerance for corruption and harassment, a chill spread. Richard Hale smirked faintly. Quite noble, Miss Blackwell. But do you think idealistic principles apply in a global operation? We thrive on flexibility, not rulebooks. A few nods agreed. Sarah remained calm. Not flexibility, new rules of the game, and we'll all follow. The meeting ended outwardly peaceful, but Sarah knew war had started. That evening, returning to the apartment, an unmarked envelope lay at the door. Inside, a blurry photo of Sarah's face, snapped secretly through her office window, with scrawled red ink. Every light has shadows, don't forget. Sarah gripped the paper, fingers trembling briefly. But instead of fear, a cold smile appeared. She knew this warning wasn't just for her, but a confession. Someone was worried. And worry meant guilt. In following days, subtle attacks began. Documents Sarah requested accidentally vanished from systems. Her internal emails leaked to tabloids, twisted into stories of an heir craving power over justice. On social media, anonymous accounts spread rumors Sarah had colluded to trap Nathan for inheritance. In the board, Richard and Victoria whispered to others, sowing doubt Sarah lacked experience, was turning Blackwell into a personal tool. Clouds of suspicion gathered, and Sarah understood. They didn't need to prove her wrong, just enough doubt to make allies hesitate. In the quiet apartment, Sarah sat by the window, city lights twinkling like thousands of eyes. Emily called, voice worried. They won't stop. You toppled one, but others won't allow it. Sarah, are you sure you want to continue? Sarah paused, then replied slowly. Emily, I didn't start this to stop at Nathan. If I stop, all those silent women will stay in darkness. I can't let that happen. She hung up, looking at her reflection in the mirror. The old bruises had faded, but heart scars remained, and those scars were the fire keeping her going. While the city buzzed outside, Sarah knew clearly, the new war had begun. Nathan was just the sacrificed pawn. The real wolves in suits on the board were her next opponents. And this time, they wouldn't err like Nathan. 4 days after Nathan's fall, Blackwell's building stayed lit all night. But this time, not for celebration, but crisis containment. Press endlessly questioned, who let Mitchell manipulate so long? Is Blackwell still safe for women? At the storm's center, Sarah Blackwell's name repeated non-stop. By day, she was front-page hero. By night, underground news, anonymous blogs, finance forums called her She-Wolf, the one who'd staged a trap on her husband to seize inheritance. Blurry old photos surfaced, stitched into narratives claiming Sarah wasn't clean. In a closed meeting, Sarah entered the room thick with opposition. Olivia Pearson sat at the head, eyes cold but silent. Richard Hale and Victoria Lang differed. They attacked with words, sharp as knives. To the board, Richard spoke, voice smooth like a politician. We face a trust crisis, and ironically, the justice symbol is causing the divide. Sarah stayed silent, letting him continue. Victoria added, Miss Blackwell, can you honestly tell us if your actions were for the company or personal revenge? Why hide your identity, deceiving the board for 2 years? The question rang, drawing probing eyes from others. This was the first strike, sow doubt. They didn't need proof of wrong, just make her controversial. Sarah breathed deep. She stood, eyes scanning the room. I hid my identity because I knew Nathan would destroy anyone opposing him directly. I became his wife to see the truth from inside. And the truth is, he stole company money, harmed our employees. If I'd stayed silent, we'd lose more than reputation. Silence enveloped. A few approving nods, but Sarah saw. Richard and Victoria had planted doubt seeds. She'd face a long campaign. That afternoon, exiting the building, Sarah was swarmed by reporters. Questions barraged, many knife-sharp. Miss Blackwell, rumors say you plotted against Nathan before marriage. True? Do you really care for victims? Or just want power? Some say you're using your fame for a new dictatorship at Blackwell. Response? Sarah didn't answer. She stepped into the car, closing the door on the noise. But in her eyes, a spark ignited. She understood. This was no longer private play. This was media war, and who controlled the narrative won. That night, Sarah sat with Emily and David in the apartment. On the table, laptop screens showed articles, comments, analyses. Emily worried. They're rewriting the story. If public turns, you'll lose all power. David added. Smart move. They don't attack direct. They make you the company's burden. Sarah closed her eyes, thinking silently. Opening them, her voice lowered. If they want media war, I'll show I don't just hunt in shadows. I'll step into the light. But this time, not alone. I'll pull other women out with me. She decided. Not just counterattack, but turn smears into catalyst for a real movement. Next morning, Sarah appeared on a major talk show. Lights shone on her face. The host asked, Rumors say Miss Blackwell acted for self-gain. What do you say to millions doubting? Sarah looked straight at the camera, voice firm. I didn't act for myself. I acted for women who couldn't speak. and I'll continue, no matter the smears. That moment spread fast. Thousands of social comments, many women sharing their stories, tagging Sarah as symbol. Richard and Victoria likely didn't expect their counterstrike to ignite a stronger movement. Torrential rain poured over New York one October evening. Sarah sat in the car, flipping through the final Blackwell Standards draft. Outside, streets blurred behind wet glass, neon lights streaking long. The driver braked suddenly at a turn. The car jolted, Sarah nearly dropping the file. A black SUV shot from a narrow alley, blocking the road. In a split second, two hooded men jumped out, rushing toward her car. The driver panicked, locking doors, but rough hands smashed the window. Sarah stayed calm, cold eyes observing. She pulled her phone, hitting the preset SOS. Seconds later, police sirens wailed from afar. The SUV sped off into the rain, leaving a long crack on the glass like a knife scar. Sarah sat still, breath rapid. This was no longer a warning. This was direct threat. Next day, news broke. Blackwell VP escapes mysterious attack. Images of the cracked car window hit every channel. Olivia Pearson immediately boosted Sarah's security, but internally, whispers spread. She's dragging the company into danger. In her office, Sarah opened an envelope police found near the scene. Inside, a short note, scrawled handwriting. Stop, or next time it's not just glass breaking. Emily met her, voice shaking with anger. They're not hiding anymore, Sarah. This is war declaration. You must withdraw before it's too late. Sarah took her friend's trembling hand. Emily, if I withdraw, everything we did means nothing. They want silence because I'm touching truth. That's why I must continue. Following days, tension escalated. Sarah's phone got anonymous midnight calls, just heavy breathing. One morning, she found her apartment door pried. Nothing taken, just a dagger stabbed into the wooden table. Police investigated, found no clear traces. David Lawson met Sarah in her office, face grave. Sarah, these aren't street thugs. This is work of powerful people with money and coldness to make you an accident. He paused, eyes sharp. If you continue, prepare for the dirtiest war. Sarah silent. She recalled Nathan's eyes as he was dragged away, hateful and desperate. Then Richard Hale's faint smile in meetings, challenging. She understood. Behind the attack was a dark power network. Nathan just the first fall. Instead of faltering, Sarah escalated. She tasked Emily's team to expand probes, tracing suspicious transactions to hidden funds. Meanwhile, she secretly met independent investigative journalists, giving puzzle pieces on deeper corruption. One night, Sarah stood on the balcony, city lights blazing below. Cold wind whipped her face, but she didn't shiver. In her mind, they want fear. But what if I don't fear? What if I use this threat to show what they'll do to keep secrets? She closed eyes, seeing faces of women who'd approached her, sharing harassment, forced silence. Each story a wound. Now, she fought not just revenge. For them. Sarah opened eyes, staring into the city's deep darkness. In her gaze, no hesitation. Only fiery resolve. If darkness wanted to swallow her, she'd become a blinding light, forcing them to reveal. Manhattan's sky that night was leaden gray, thunder cracking skyscrapers like bright knives. Sarah sat in her office, desk lights spilling over the expanded probe files Emily sent. Numbers matched suspiciously, hidden transactions to an anonymous fund, looping back to a Cayman Islands shell. Sarah circled in red pen. This thread didn't lead to Nathan. He was the fallen flag. It led to Richard Hale, the CFO, and part of the intact power web. The door opened softly. Emily entered, face tense. Sarah, we have a problem, she whispered, placing an envelope on the desk. Inside, leaked emails bearing Sarah's exact digital signature, directives, funneling hidden funds to cover scandals. Sarah frowned. Forged. Emily nodded, eyes anxious. I know, but the board needs surface proof. They'll use this against you. Sarah gripped the papers, rage surging. This was Richard and Victoria's prepared strike. No need to kill with knives, just turn her into a criminal in trusted eyes. 2 days later, news exploded. Leaked emails implicate Sarah Blackwell in hidden fund. Finance channels analyzed, many sneering. No different from Nathan, just a wolf in a dress. In the office, chill enveloped. Employees avoided Sarah's eyes. Even former supporters whispered doubts. Sarah knew isolation started not from enemies, but invisible distance from surroundings. That night, she met David Lawson. The lawyer sat pensively, placing a file before her. "Sarah, I investigated. And I have to say, the leak might not just be from the board." He paused, voice low. "But from Emily." Sarah froze. Each word hammered down. David continued. "Metadata traces show the forged emails built on the exact server Emily uses. I know you trust her. But, Sarah, in Power Wars, betrayal never comes from afar. From right beside." The room fell silent. Sarah recalled Emily's trembling beside her, strengthening hand grips. But now, memories mixed with the email envelope image, brought by Emily herself, to warn or probe reaction. That night, Sarah didn't sleep. She sat alone by the window, city lights blurred in rain. In her head, a tormenting question. Emily ally or bot? Next morning, Sarah decided a test. She gave Emily fake info, a hidden transaction invented, stored only in one file, then waited. 2 days later, the info appeared. In Richard Hale's hands, leaked to media as new discovery. Sarah sat silent in office, eyes ice cold. She understood, no more proof needed. Emily, most trusted, had become the betraying link. Reason, fear, coercion, or ambition, results same. Trap now not outside, but in her ranks. When Emily entered, Sarah smiled as if nothing. "Thanks for the hard work," she said lightly. But inside, cold fire blazed. "If you've chosen their side, you'll fall with them." New York nights swallowed in thick darkness. Sarah sat alone in office, only laptop glow. On it, forged emails, leaks, digital traces revealed truth. Emily, shoulder-to-shoulder ally, now a dagger in her back. Sarah didn't cry. No room for tears in this battlefield. She quietly closed the laptop, leaned back. Betrayal stung, but in pain, a thought flashed. If Emily chose them, I'll make them pay with that betrayal. Next day, Sarah appeared in Blackwell's hall, composed to chilling, board already seated. Richard Hale smiled smugly, knowing Sarah's hidden fund. News spread. Emily sat back, avoiding eyes, face tense, hiding secret. Sarah stood, opening thin file, voice clear, sharp. "In past week, accusations against me, forged emails, leaks. I investigated, and today bring proof it's all staged." Murmurs waved. Richard frowned, trying calm. Sarah nodded lightly. Hall doors opened. David Lawson entered, followed by 2 federal investigators. On big screen, Sarah played new slides, email metadata, digital traces, video of forging process from Emily's server. "The one behind this forgery," Sarah said, eyes straight at Emily, "was someone I trusted absolutely." Room hushed. Emily trembled, lips moving wordlessly. Investigators approached, hands on her shoulders. Richard jumped. "This is staged. She's fabricating to save herself." Sarah unflinching. "If fabricated, why did FBI validate evidence? And why in this recording she pressed play?" Emily's voice rang. "Richard, I transferred the info. But she won't suspect match Emily's perfectly." Room exploded. Some board members whispered shock. Few turned to Richard doubtfully. Olivia Pearson, head table, eyes narrowed like blade. Emily slumped in chair, tears flowing. Too late. Curtain pulled down. Sarah turned to Richard, cold smile. "You thought to break me with doubt, but your arrogance betrayed you. From today, I won't just protect this company from likes of Nathan. I'll root out all selling Blackwell to darkness." Olivia tapped table, voice decisive. "Internal probe expands. Anyone involved in forgery faces consequences. And you, Sarah Blackwell, from today, full authority to clean Blackwell Industries." Richard sat stunned. Smile vanished, eyes burning hate. He knew, from this moment, he'd shifted from attacker to new prey. As meeting ended, Sarah stood by window overlooking glittering city. Emily escorted away, Richard losing influence, and she, from silent wife, now power center. But in blazing light, Sarah knew darkness not gone. Other board members wouldn't idle. Next counterstrike could be crueler, she whispered, only for herself. The war has just begun. The room emptied gradually. Blackwell headquarters lights piercing night. Sarah stood by glass, viewing New York like giant map at her feet. She'd won a chess round, but knew those sitting with her today could be knife-hiding enemies tomorrow. This victory brought no peace, but reminder. Road ahead thorny, but in Sarah's eyes, no fear, only resolve of woman turning pain to strength, bruises to guiding torch. Open question. Could Sarah withstand entire power network, or become next victim in endless war? What do you think? If you were Sarah, would you continue fighting or stop for peace? Share in comments, and don't forget to follow for the next chapter.